You're listening to Blitz.
Okay, here we are with the Pioneer CT-Y7. This is also known as a CT-40, possibly 940. The difference is colour. I don't know which one's which, but I'm going to guess that the 40 is the silver and the 940 is probably black or something like that. So the only real issue I actually had with this deck was the take-up reels didn't work and it wouldn't fast forward or rewind or anything like that. And behind this panel here, there's actually like little idler wheel, and it flicks this way and that way. And there's a small spring that actually pulls it up just slightly into contact with the reel motor. If we have a look here, so there's a small motor here. This is the capstan motor, and this is the secondary motor. They all work. There's nothing wrong with any of it. So what seemed to be the problem is that idler tie was not making contact with the the brass ferrule of the motor. So what I had to do basically was actually just take the spring out and just bend it a bit until it made contact. Now I looked at buying some springs for that, and I could get replacement springs that were almost what I needed, but they were actually bent the wrong way. But they also had some, let's have a look here, they had some piano wire. Where is it? There it is. But the one that I ended up buying was actually a little bit too thin to make the correct, get the correct tension on it. So anyway, I stuck with just basically bending the spring that was in there just enough to sort of get it into contact, and it has been working quite fine. So I think that's a job done. Everything is actually in pretty good nick. It's a nice looking machine. It's not dirty. I mean, I haven't actually cleaned this at all. There's been nothing to do on this. It's pretty clean already, so I'm actually very happy. One problem I did have is when I took this faceplate off. As you can see, these connect into the back, and as you can see, I've had to repair all of those because they all snapped, every single one of them. They just would not come off. As you pulled it, they just snapped. They all snapped. So the plastic basically just became brittle. I think it's kind of shrunk a little bit over the end of the switch. So I'll just show you the switch here. So as you can see, there's a just like a little groove in there, and that's what they sort of clip onto. But I think what's happened is the plastic's actually just basically shrunk a little bit, and with age and everything, it's just gone a bit brittle. So, they all broke. I repaired that with a bit of, it's sort of like an epoxy putty. I'll show you the other one that I've got here. This is, aqua epoxy putty, but the one I actually used was not for, wasn't an aqua one, it was just a regular one. But, they all cost the same, and I got that from, like, Daiso, so it was, 100 yen per thing. So, it's good enough. One thing I did have to do, though, obviously, because the first one I tried, when I pushed it on, it actually snapped again, and you could actually see the line was where the putty was. It actually broke along that line. So what I had to do was on this part here, I actually had to file all of those, and because it's all connected to the board, it actually was a bit of a pain in the bum. But anyway, it's done, so I don't have to touch it again. And if I really need to, I think these will actually come out without breaking. But I think because I've done basically all the work that I need to do on this now, if you have a look there, there's all nice new electrolytic capacitors and all that sort of stuff. So I basically sat down and decided to spend an hour on it yesterday and just replace the whole lot. And so I don't really need to pull this apart again. Before I put all this together, I checked that, it had a nice bias signal and all that sort of stuff. So it works well, it's recording. It needs probably a little bit of, fine tuning on the adjustment dials and all that stuff there, but that's it. So the only other thing of interest to show is basically this board here. It's basically got like, an add-on card, like you have in computers and all that. So this is, the Dolby card, and you've got your two chips, which I assume are the Dolby chips, and then a whole bunch of, capacitors and bits and pieces on there. So that's it. I mean, I did most of these. There's a few still, with the red mark, and they were sort of funny values that I don't have, like 1.5, microfarads. I mean, you don't really see those very much anymore. And some of these others, there's sort of like like a special audio or low ESR or whatever it is. Now, I don't know that it would actually matter of, replace them in some other decks with just, regular modern ones. And I think the regular modern ones are actually probably as good as whatever the fancy ones that they used back in the day. So, anyway. But I'll, because this is a board that comes out separately, I'm happy to just leave those for the time being, and when I can, I'll replace those, just to basically, bring the whole thing up to date and keep it going. The other surprise was actually the belt was actually in fairly good nick here, and it works fine. I dropped a bit of oil on all the bearing surfaces that I could get to, and I haven't actually taken this motor apart yet. One thing I've noticed is actually one of my most popular videos is about actually disassembling the motor from some of these decks. So I kind of was thinking of buying a cheap deck to just pull the motor apart, and then if it didn't work, I didn't care. This was, fairly cheap, but probably a little bit more than I was hoping. But the thing is, it's actually working pretty well. The wear on flutter, I think, was like 0.05% or something stupid, and I mean, I haven't really done anything to it. So I'm kind of a bit reluctant actually just to pull it apart, But one thing I do want to try, and I know I've threatened to do this a few times, is actually put a remote trim pot in here for the speed and put it a multi-turn. So if I do pull this apart, that would actually be the main objective, would actually to put a multi-turn pot and somehow mount it to the outside here somewhere that we can, adjust it, a bit more easily and have a bit more control, because I can always get it around the 3000 hertz with my tape, but I can never get it bang on because you just can't adjust it right. And whatever I put in there to adjust always seems to get stuck. When I pull it out, it just nudges it and moves it just a bit, so it's always a little bit out. Now there is conveniently a screw hole here, and as you can see there's like bits and pieces screwed into there, so that might actually be a nice place to sort of screw it down, and you can just do the final adjustments and all that there. So anyway, will I do it? Won't I? I don't know, because I'm pretty happy with this. This arrived Sunday, it's now Tuesday, and it is actually pretty much ready to go. Slight adjustment might be needed for metal tape. I've tried it with normal tape, that all seems to be going quite well. I've got the recording balance is about right, I've got the playback balances right, so I don't really want to actually mess around with it too much more, because I could actually just put this back up for sale now and be pretty happy with how it's going, especially as I've played tapes that were recorded on some of the other decks and they sound pretty good. So anyway, so that's it for this project. There's actually not a real lot to talk about. Basically, the main surprise for this was that actually the reason it didn't work was mechanical, complete mechanical, and it was all to do with one spring losing tension. I did replace the idler arm, and I also replaced the pinch roller because I had them, so why not put new ones in? So there you go. Yeah, what this is the like the push rod. Basically, you have your switch at the front, like for Dolby and tape type and all that, and it pushes, one of these types of switches. What happened on all of these, as I was, removing them, they all snapped, and they all snapped in basically exactly the same way. So what I have done is I've already sort of used some solvent to basically get those back together, but obviously as I tried it to put it back on the switch, they just broke again. So what I'm going to do, I did one as a test last night, and I'll show you what we're going to do. So as you can see, it goes in like that. It's a bit tight. On the switches on the unit itself, what I'll do is I'll just file that ever so slightly, just to give it just a little bit more clearance, and maybe just chamfer the edges a little bit more, just to help push it on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a file. I'm using basically a triangle file, but a flat file could probably do the same, and just ever so slightly, I just want to put like a slight sort of chamfer in there. So this is for two reasons. One is, we get rid of this sort of like surface finishing paint. We're going back to a nice, it's a clean plastic. And also we're just removing just a little bit of material, because we want just a very slight chamfer in there, just so that we've got somewhere to put some material in, so that it will bond nicely. Anyway, so you don't have to see me do this for the whole lot. The only other thing I'm going to say is that we're also going to just round off that corner edge just in there. That's basically so that when we put our repair in there, we put our material that's going to go over the top, it doesn't have a sharp edge hitting on it, because over time that could potentially cause a stress fracture. So we're just doing that just to relieve the stress. Okay, so you get the idea with what we're doing here. Now the next step is we use a bit of this stuff. Now this is just basically an epoxy putty, and you can cut this as much as you want and then put it back on the thing, and you just squish this up and roll it around until it is nicely mixed. And as always with anything epoxy, once you think you've got it mixed, just keep going and keep mixing. And this is the one I did last night. Basically just wrap it all around and just give some extra support to all these surfaces. So these are exactly the same. So you can see kind of, hang on, they're the same. So you can see the extent to where this has gone. So it's gone over this side, and it's coming well over here, just to give some extra support. Now obviously, if we don't address the switch, we don't do something with that, what we're going to end up doing is breaking this in a new spot. So I don't really want to do that. So I think the thing to do would be we just give that a slight clean up with a file. Just take a little bit off, just to help get that in there.